Hey, I wanted to do a follow-up to yesterday's video where I talked about this guy that he was a Christian minister and he got famous writing many Christian books, and his wife she did the music in their church, and they were part of they were leaders in what's called the purity movement, which I'm not totally familiar with, but it was very extreme in terms of Christian courting and male-female relationships. And then all of a sudden he posts this thing where he had someone stand behind him and photograph him so he can have this very pretentious looking photo at this very scenic place out in the nature, like he's reflecting and coming to new things. And he's announcing that he's no longer a Christian. Now, many people, they said they never really believed he really was a true Christian. And if you look at who he quotes in his post, he quotes Martin Luther, which tells you he was really following Luther, not Jesus. But this is a guy that from a very early age, at least early 20s, he lived his life as a professional Christian. And he was somewhat a celebrity, I guess, in this evangelical Christian world. And he eventually became the minister of this megachurch. And his wife did the music in the church, and he had this life as a Christian celebrity, a professional Christian, while other people, they were out spending their 20s and 30s in the job market, working a lot of jobs, changing jobs, trying to make it, to support themselves and their families. This guy had what seems to be somewhat of an easy life, just from an early age, being groomed to go into church and be this Christian celebrity. And it's funny just to look at his kind of pretentious posts. It's kind of funny to see this 45-year-old man posing like a teenage girl. But this got me thinking, and one of the things that I should have said in the previous video, but you've heard me say it in other videos, and you're going to hear me say it again in the future, and I'm going to say it in this video. You want to believe in ideals, not men, because people will they'll let you down every time. So you want to believe in your ideals and not get too attached to any personality or any leader, because eventually you're just going to find yourself let down over and over again. And whatever beliefs that you have that are good, you're going to start trashing those, or you're not going to fully believe in your ideals anymore, and it's going to depower them. So believe in your ideals, not men. And something that we're seeing a lot of lately is grifters. And I was just telling someone the other day that any kind of ideology, any kind of movement, whether it's a political movement or a religious thing, it's very easy to become a leader in, especially if for example, if you're a good-looking girl, it's very easy to become a leader in the conservative right-wing movement, because all you have to do is learn the talking points and just harp those over and over again, and other people will cheerlead for you. You don't have to believe them. And look at what just happened with Laura Southern. We found out that she's nothing more than a grifter. Now, I never believed in her in the first place, maybe because I'm a little older, and I don't want to put my trust, my faith in some young girl. I don't want to be a part of a movement where there's a young 20-year-old girl as the leader. Just like when a lot of conservatives started cheerleading for Kanye West. I don't really have anything against Kanye West, but I don't want to be a part of a movement where that guy's considered the leader. So you see a lot of these grifters, and Christianity. One of the things that kept me from becoming a Christian sooner was actual Christians themselves, because it's not like being a doctor or a lawyer where you have to pass some sort of test and have actual qualifications where there's actual standards. Anyone that says they're a Christian, basically, you have to believe them or not believe them. There's no standard or measuring point. They just have to say they believe in Jesus as their savior. And Christianity attracts a lot of people that are outright crazy. There's so many people that are pretty much psychos, and they're trying to reform themselves. I've met so many guys like this, not so much people that are devout Catholics, more evangelicals. This is pretty common that you find with people that claim to be evangelical Christians. They're very nutty people a lot of the time. And maybe it's because, like you see in these mega churches, where it's all about rock music and putting on this big show like you're at a concert or something, and drumming up all this excitement, a lot of it seems to be about feeling. And if you contrast that with Catholicism, you talk to a kid, I'm thinking of myself here, growing up going to Catholic church every week with my parents. If you talk to a kid and you ask them, so how did you feel about church? How was it? What are they going to say? They're going to say it's boring, because it's not about your feeling so much. And these people, as you can see, these MegaChurch pastors, which apparently from people that went to their church, apparently they did put on quite a show at this church, but they didn't stick it out for the long haul. And you don't really see that in much of Catholicism's, because it's not so much about the feeling. And I heard an interesting definition of integrity recently, and it was something like integrity is following through long after the feeling and the excitement of the newness has passed. So think about that. If that's what integrity is, following through with something long after the excitement of the new feeling has passed, well, these people simply lack integrity. And it's interesting because it's like, the question I would like to ask this guy is, well, what are you going to do now? What now? You've renounced your faith. You seem to be an atheist. The wife, interesting enough, let's check out her Instagram. The wife is not actually an atheist, but now she's into all this new age spirituality. She believes in a God, but it's a God that wants her to basically do whatever she wants. She doesn't want to be confined by Christian authority telling her right or wrong. So she's going around, she's got the lesbian haircut, middle-aged woman, and now she's talking about her new age spirituality, and she's talking about how rough it is. Here she is making a duck face on Instagram like a teenage girl. But she's going around talking about how constricting conservative Christianity is. And that makes me think, and I can't get too much into this publicly because a lot of people will hate me, so I'll leave this out. When she's talking about how constricting growing up in conservative Christianity is, it sounds like she was abused in some way. And I'm not going to give my specific thoughts, but I'll just say it sounds like she was abused by someone within the church, possibly a relative, and I'm not going to speculate publicly how she may have been abused. But even look at this post here. I decided the most subversive, revolutionary thing I could do was show up for my life and not be ashamed. Well, maybe we should be ashamed of certain things. If you do porno, if you do things that are obviously very bad, you're going to carry a shame, and you probably should carry a shame the rest of your life. Here we got the swimsuit selfies, or she's having someone take her picture here in a swimsuit in the ocean, much like you would expect an Instagram model to be doing, but we have an older lady doing this. Let's check this out. And it kind of tells you, like, here she is in her swimsuit on a boat, like in nice blue water. It shows you that this is probably someone that didn't have to work very hard in her life. I know many of you guys are struggling in life, and is this really what we're supposed to have as a role model or an influence over us? Someone that's had this easy life as a professional Christian, and then when the jig is up, you guys just jump ship, basically. That's what they're doing. The jig is up, and now they have no choice but to almost renounce it, because people are going to find out that they couldn't actually practice what they're preaching. So the easiest thing is actually to do is to jump ship and say, well, I'm wrong. Jesus isn't real. We don't need that. But my question would be, well, what now? And after I released my video yesterday, Ramsey Paul, a YouTuber, if you don't know him, check him out. If you actually go to my channel page, he's on the featured channels. But Ramsey Paul actually uploaded a video that was really good, said a lot of similar things that I said, but had his own take on them. And one of the things Ramsey Paul brought up was whether God is real or not. And me personally, I definitely believe God is real in a very supernatural sense. And I didn't always, but I have to believe in it because there's just so many times that God has intervened in my life and made things work out for me, even if they maybe shouldn't have worked out for me, that I can't deny them. And what I would ask what Ramsey Paul said was, aside from whether God is real or not, the really great thing about religion is it provides a structure, a structure that helps you from doing things that could be very damaging to yourself. Like, if you want to just listen to your internal voice or do whatever you want, you might just say, well, maybe I should just drink and drive, or maybe I should do the cocaine, or maybe I should live a promiscuous life where you get diseases. If you don't have religion, you don't have that structure. There's no reason to follow it. And I think back of my own life, even before I was a Christian, and I lived a long time as an agnostic, where I thought I was never a full-blown atheist. If I was a full-blown atheist, I can only imagine how much more debaucherous my life would have been. But I never got to that point. But living as an agnostic for many years, I made a lot of mistakes that if I wouldn't have committed to my faith, I wouldn't have made. And probably my biggest regret in life, aside from not having kids earlier, is not becoming a Christian earlier, because I made so many mistakes, and people think that religion's going to hold them back, or having kids are going to hold them back, and you believe it, you buy into that lie. And it's not that. What really holds you back is costly mistakes, some of which you may never recover from, some of which you'll have shame for the rest of your life. And going around telling people that they shouldn't feel shame, that's not going to help them. But my question for this Josh Harris guy that seems to be an atheist now, well, what now? Obviously, your wife, she's going to go, I'm sure, have a promiscuous life, hooking up with women, other men, hooking up with men and women, hooking up with whatever. And now this guy, I'm sure he feels like he missed out because he tried to live that purity lifestyle. He missed out. But as someone that's lived maybe somewhat of an impure lifestyle, that didn't live that lifestyle, that went the other direction, I can tell you that that's a mistake too. You get a lot of the damage that pornography does if you live a promiscuous lifestyle. That's why I tell young guys, never live a promiscuous lifestyle, because it's always going to stick in your mind, and you're always going to have these memories and these things that ultimately they're going to bring up discontentment in your life. Maybe you're going to want to be with one woman and have your family life, but you don't want to be haunted by this. So don't buy into that lie that a young man should sow his wild oats. That's something we're always told in our culture, and that philosophy of you should sow your wild oats. You go out and you live a very promiscuous lifestyle, and then it'll be easy to settle down and get married someday. Well, that's insane, because that's like telling a drug addict, hey man, when you're 30, you're going to have to give up drugs. So in the meantime, do tons of heroin, and then by the time your 30th birthday comes, you're not going to have an urge for doing heroin anymore. You're going to be sick of it. Well, that's not what happens. You just get more and more desire and more urge to do it, and it's hard to quit it. It's much easier to never start doing drugs or never start living a promiscuous lifestyle. But my question for this guy is, what now? You've renounced God, so now it's this anything goes philosophy. Your wife, I'm sure, is going to be promiscuous. She's a slut now, and you're going to be a male slut. And I've seen so many guys like this. There's so many guys that I see that end up sex tourists in Asia. They get in a marriage, and for whatever reason, it doesn't work out. And then when they're done, they just want to go crazy and try and act like teenage boys. And they end up flying over to Asia. They want to go over to Angeles City or Pattaya. And then they end up hooking up and doing all sorts of debaucherous things, looking for happiness. So that's the route that this guy's obviously going for. And if you want to do that, whatever, who cares about your life? But what about your children? Most liberal parents I know, they don't even want their kids to live a promiscuous life. But you're basically telling your kids, yeah, just go do whatever. It doesn't really matter, essentially. There's no God, so we might as well do whatever we want. If you want to have sex, just go have sex, kids, and do whatever you want. And eventually then, what happens if they do pornography? Well, that's not really wrong, and we shouldn't have any shame of it. Just go do it. And then why stop there? Why stop there? Like, what if they start stealing money from you for drugs? Well, if there's no God and there's no structure and there's no belief that there's a higher power that doesn't want us to do this, there's really no reason. That's just your opinion now of what right and wrong is. Instead of letting religion decide what's right and wrong for you, you're saying you're smarter and you're gonna decide. You know better than God, essentially, now is what you're saying. And so I think your story, dude, Josh Harris, I think it's going to be an interesting one. I'm sure we'll see you at upcoming Pride event rallies, and maybe we'll see you on the sex tour circuit around Asia or some third world country. And the bottom line is, when it comes to this structure, it keeps us from doing it really does keep us from doing a lot of things that can harm us. Recently, there was an American guy that was living in my building, a guy from Tennessee, and this is a guy that maybe you could say he abandoned his faith, but I don't think he really had faith to begin with. He'd been married for almost 20 years. He had a 20-year-old son. Him and his wife and his son, they had some kind of falling out. So he ends up here, and he's in the building, and he's shacked up with these two sisters, these two girls. He's sleeping with not only two girls at the same time, but both sisters. And I don't need to tell you all the ways that can go wrong. But aside from that, these girls, because he wants to hook up with these two girls, and he starts relying on them for everything, and he's happy sleeping with both of them, eventually these girls end up scamming him out of pretty much every penny he has. He blows about $100,000 is what he told me. And I was telling my wife that anytime you sin, this is something I learned before I was a true Christian, and before I converted to actual Christianity. Years ago, I decided I should try and live as a Christian, because I learned that sin always has a price. And when in a religious sense, God isn't telling us not to sin because he wants to keep us from having fun, but it's for our own benefits. It's like you have a child that's a young toddler and he doesn't know the oven's hot, and you tell him, hey, don't touch that, that's going to hurt you. But then the kid touches it anyway. Well, the kid could have avoided a lot of pain if he would have just listened in the first place. So that's why we should avoid sin. I was telling my wife that, boy, this guy's problems could have all been avoided if he could have avoided sin of trying to do what he's doing with these two sisters. And then it came to the point where he couldn't even live in this building. He had to move out about a month ago because he just had no money. He couldn't pay his rent. He couldn't even pay his electric bills. And like, I was talking to him on his last day before he left. And I didn't want to be preachy to this guy. I wasn't going to tell him what I told my wife. But he said, this is all because I tried to have two girls. He's not a dumb guy, and he figured it out, and he realized it on his own. And now this guy, for going from having $100,000 about a year and a half ago, now he's living in what's called a squatter's area. He didn't even have money to pay for that. He's basically renting a room, and he didn't have money, so he traded his TV. They wanted about $100 to $150, something like that, I guess, for this room, totally unfurnished, and he traded his TV for 1 month's rent, and he has no more stuff. He's sleeping on this hard concrete floor. This American guy that had about $100,000 a year and a half ago, now he's sleeping on a hard concrete floor, living like someone from a third world country, all because he couldn't avoid sin. And something that I'll leave you with this is something that I really wanted to include in yesterday's video, but I forgot about it. I was listening to the Unashamed podcast by the Robertson family, the Duck Dynasty people, and you can see this on YouTube if you go to the Phil Robertson YouTube channel. But the older one, Phil, he was telling an atheist about Jesus and salvation and all that kind of thing. And this atheist said to him, you know, I want to believe that there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel, but no one's going to tell me who I can and can't have sex with. And Phil said to him, well, it doesn't work that way. If you want to do this, it requires a life of restraint. And I thought that was a great story, and it's stuck with me since I heard it a few weeks ago. And I have to say, though, even if it requires a life of restraint, which I believe it does, since I had my child, I don't really feel like I'm giving up stuff. I feel like I've gained so much, and I've lost a lot of desire to maybe do things that I would have done before that are not 100% right. So I don't really even feel personally like I've given up since I started this path. I don't really feel like I'm making sacrifices. It's been a lot easier than you'd think after having the kid, but that's because I have the proper motivator. It's like if someone says, I'm going to take your photograph a month from now shirtless, well, it's going to be a lot easier to lose weight than if there was nothing in sight like that to motivate you. So it does require a life of restraint. You can't have it your way. It's not pick and choose spirituality like the wife is trying to do with her thing, which is something you see a lot of Americans doing. It's pick and choose consumeristic spirituality. Oh, I'll take a little bit of this from Buddhism. I'll take a little bit of this from Hinduism. I'll take a little bit of this from Christianity. That's not religion, and that's ultimately not the way it should work, but you can leave your thoughts down below. You can check out more of my videos when you're done with that.